You know what's more painful than discovering someone betrayed you? Finding out they've been doing it systematically for 15 years while smiling to your face at Sunday dinners? Trust me on this one. I never expected to find the blueprint of my own destruction tucked inside a hollowed-out classic novel in my dead brother's lake house, but there it was. 5 leather-bound journals meticulously documenting how Michael, my brilliant, charismatic older brother, had orchestrated every unfortunate setback in my professional life while positioning himself as my biggest supporter. Talk about playing the long game. I'm Ethan Reeves, 38, former rising star in architectural design, now teaching at Cornell after what polite company calls my career-altering accident 3 years ago. Michael was 2 years older, the family golden boy who could do no wrong, at least that's what I believed until 4 weeks ago, when his private plane took an unscheduled dive into the Adirondacks. Death has a way of revealing uncomfortable truths, or in this case, unleashing them in a flood. Let me set the scene for the moment everything unraveled. Picture a modernist lake house in Vermont, all clean lines, dramatic cantilevers, and floor-to-ceiling windows designed to make you feel simultaneously impressed and slightly inadequate. Classic Michael. I'd been putting off the grim task of clearing out his belongings, partly from grief, partly because my ex-wife Vanessa had offered to help, and spending time with her still felt like pressing on a bruise that never quite healed. But there we were, sorting through the meticulously organized life of a man who apparently maintained the same surgical precision in plotting my downfall as he did with his sock drawer. "You should keep this place," Vanessa said, running her manicured hand across the ridiculous imported Italian marble countertop. "It's worth a fortune, and it suits you. It's ostentatious and cold," I replied, rifling through Michael's mail, like living in an architectural magazine spread rather than a home. She gave me that look, half pity, half exasperation. "You always did undersell yourself, Ethan. It's why Michael always seemed to what I prompted when she didn't finish. Nothing." She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a nervous tell I remembered all too well from our marriage. "Let's tackle the office. That's where the important documents will be." Michael's office was exactly what you'd expect from someone pathologically committed to appearances. Everything arranged with mathematical precision, not a paperclip out of place. I was reaching for a book on the upper shelf when I dislodged the Brothers Karamazov, ironically, a gift I'd given him for his 30th birthday. It fell with a thud that sounded wrong. "Hollow, what's that?" Vanessa asked, looking up from the drawer she was organizing. I turned the book over in my hands, feeling its unusual weight, noticing how the pages didn't fan properly. Something's off about this. Inside was a hidden compartment containing 5 journals, their leather covers matching Michael's pretentious desk set. Vanessa's expression shifted in a way I couldn't quite interpret, somewhere between surprise and, was that fear? His diaries? I didn't know Michael kept journals, neither did I. "Maybe we should respect his privacy," she suggested too quickly. "He's gone, Ethan. Some things are better left unknown." Now, I've never considered myself particularly intuitive. Michael was always the people person, while I focused on design concepts and structural integrity, but something in her tone triggered an alarm bell. That night in my hotel room, with the first journal open before me, I understood why the first entry was dated 12 years ago, right after I'd landed the Patterson Museum project. My big break, the commission that should have launched my career into the stratosphere. September 12, 2013, Ethan landed the Patterson Museum today. Mom called, practically weeping with pride. Her precious younger son, the true artist of the family. "He's just like your father," she said, as if that's somehow a compliment rather than comparing him to a man who abandoned his family for some creative pipe dream. I said all the right things. Of course, congratulated little brother when he called, sounding almost apologetic about his success. "That's Ethan, always afraid to outshine me, always seeking my approval. If he only knew how much I resent every accolade, every fawning review of his visionary approach and ethical design philosophy. I've worked too hard to be overshadowed by him. The Patterson project needs to disappear. Fortunately, James Patterson and I share certain proclivities that his wife would find devastating. Perhaps it's time to call in that marker." I sat back, feeling like I'd been punched in the chest. The Patterson Museum had been my first major commission, the project that should have established my reputation. 2 months after breaking ground, the funding had mysteriously evaporated. The project was shelved, eventually handed to a corporate firm that completely scrapped my design, erasing any trace of my contribution. Michael had been the picture of fraternal support, taking me out for drinks, assuring me these things happened in our business. "You'll bounce back, Ethan," he'd said, clapping me on the shoulder. "You always do. What a performance. Oscar-worthy." Really, I flipped forward, my heart beating faster with each page turn, each revelation more devastating than the last. January 17, 2014. Met Vanessa tonight at Ethan's faculty reception. She's completely wasted on him, intelligent, sophisticated, with an ambition that my little brother is too self-absorbed to nurture. The way she looked at me when Ethan was busy charming the department chair, there's something there, an opening. My little brother has always been oblivious to what's right in front of him, We exchanged numbers under the pretense of planning his surprise birthday party. I have other surprises in mind. I felt physically ill reading entry after entry detailing their affair, which apparently began just 7 months into my marriage, secret meetings while I was traveling for work, hotel rooms booked under false names, weekend conferences that were actually trysts in Miami, Chicago, San Francisco. March 8, 2014, Vanessa came to me directly from their bed today. There's something intoxicating about taking what belongs to Ethan, about being inside her with the scent of his cologne still on her skin. She cried afterward. Guilt, she claimed. I told her what she needed to hear, that she deserves more than what Ethan can give her, that she's too exceptional for his mundane life. She believes me because she wants to. Women like Vanessa need to feel extraordinary, and Ethan has always been too absorbed in his precious artistic integrity to make anyone feel truly seen. It's almost too easy. Outside my hotel room, a thunderstorm had rolled in, as if nature itself was responding to the tempest building inside me. Vanessa and Michael. For years, behind my back, I called her, unable to contain the rage and betrayal threatening to consume me. Did you sleep with my brother? A long silence, then a shaky exhale. Ethan, yes or no? Vanessa, did you fuck my brother while we were married? It wasn't that simple. I hung up, unable to stomach whatever justification she'd concocted. The truth was there in black and white, page after damning page. But what came next in the journals was even worse. November 20th, 2022, Ethan's firm is a finalist for the Highline Towers project, my project, the one I've been cultivating for 2 years. Of course, the selection committee was impressed by his sustainable approach, as if green roofs and recycled materials are somehow revolutionary concepts worth sacrificing profit margins for. I've invested too much to lose this to him. Construction site accidents happen all the time. Scaffolding fails, inspection walkways collapse. Nothing fatal. I'm not a monster. Just enough to create doubt about his competence, his attention to detail. Martin owes me a favor, and he oversees the site safety inspections. A small adjustment to the temporary supports during Ethan's walkthrough next week should be sufficient. I stared at the words, unable to process their meaning for several minutes. My accident, the collapse that had shattered my left leg, crushed my pelvis, and ended my hands-on career had been engineered by my own brother. The months of excruciating physical therapy, the addiction to painkillers I'd barely overcome, the end of my marriage as Vanessa grew tired of playing nurse, all orchestrated by Michael. Let that sink in for a moment. My own brother deliberately orchestrated an accident that nearly killed me, all because I was a finalist for a project he wanted. If that doesn't redefine sibling rivalry, I don't know what does. I read through all 5 journals that night, absorbing every betrayal, every manipulation, every instance where Michael had sabotaged my projects, poisoned potential clients against me, and systematically dismantled my career while presenting himself as my biggest cheerleader. The man should have gone into acting instead of architecture. The final journal contained entries from just weeks before his fatal crash. April 5th, is rebuilding his life, against all odds. The teaching position at Cornell suits him safely. Academic, no threat to my business. Vanessa is finally cutting ties with him completely, filing for divorce even though they've been separated for years. I've won on every front, yet it brings less satisfaction than I expected. Perhaps I've been too harsh on my little brother. He never stood a chance against me, never had my drive, my willingness to do whatever it takes. There's almost no pleasure in destroying someone who makes it so easy. Once the Archer Tower is complete next month, I'll have achieved everything I set out to do. My legacy secure, my name synonymous with architectural innovation. Perhaps then, I can afford to be generous, maybe even reconcile with Ethan, now that he's no longer competition. After all, blood is blood. The last entry was dated just 3 days before his plane crashed. April 27, 2025, had dinner with Ethan tonight. He seems different, more perceptive. Asked questions about the Patterson project from years ago, mentioned running into James recently, something about his manner set off warning bells. For the first time, I wonder if he suspects anything. Probably paranoia on my part. Ethan has always been trusting to the point of naivety. It's what made him so easy to manipulate all these years. Still, I've taken precautions with these journals. No one will find them, and if they somehow did, it would be my word against some scribblings in a book. Flying to the lake house tomorrow to clear my head before the Archer Tower opening. The weather looks questionable, but I've flown in worse. Some risks are worth taking. I closed the final journal as dawn broke over the Vermont mountains. The brother I thought I knew had never existed. The life I thought I'd lived had been carefully manipulated by the person I trusted most. The question now was, what would I do with this knowledge? Here's the thing about discovering someone has systematically betrayed you. For over a decade, your first instinct is scorched earth. Expose everything. Let the world see the monster behind the charming facade. But what would that accomplish? Michael was already dead. His reputation couldn't feel shame. His legacy couldn't be wounded. I spent the day and a daze, mechanically packing Michael's belongings, ignoring Vanessa's increasingly frantic calls and texts. By evening, I'd made a decision. I drove to a secluded spot overlooking the lake, built a small fire, and prepared to burn the journals. Let the truth die with Michael. Let me move forward without the burden of his betrayal. As the flames licked upward, my phone rang. Martin Reeves, the site safety inspector Michael had mentioned. In his journal, "Ethan, I heard you were handling Michael's affairs," he said without preamble. "There's something you should know." "About the accident at Highline?" I asked, watching the fire. A long pause. "He told you, in a manner of speaking?" Another pause. "It wasn't supposed to go that far. He said it would just be enough to embarrass you, maybe cost you the contract." I never thought that I'd nearly die. I finished for him. That I'd lose my career, my marriage, everything I'd built. "I'm sorry," he said, the words hollow and insufficient. "Michael ... He had a way of making you feel like you had no choice. He knew things about people, used them." I thought about the journals in my hands, the power they represented. "Yes, he did. There's something else," Martin continued, "about his plane crash. It wasn't just bad weather, Ethan. The preliminary investigation found evidence of tampering with the fuel line. They're treating it as a potential homicide." The fire crackled, sparks flying upward into the darkening sky. "Who would want to kill my brother? The list is probably longer than you think. But that's not why I called. They found something in the wreckage, a thumb drive with files about the Archer Tower, structural calculations that don't match the official plans. Safety margins reduced beyond legal limits. If that building opens as scheduled next month," I thought. Closed my eyes, pieces falling into place. Michael cutting corners to maximize profit. Michael, who had orchestrated my accident at Highline, now potentially responsible for putting hundreds of lives at risk. "I think he was planning to come forward," Martin said. "That's why he had the files with him. Maybe trying to make things right at the end. Or covering his tracks," I thought, looking at the journals. The convenient redemption narrative of a man who sensed the walls closing in. "What are you going to do?" Martin asked. "What indeed? Burn the evidence of Michael's betrayal and move on. Or use it, use all of it to expose the truth about the brother everyone thought was a visionary, a pillar of integrity." "I need to think," I told him, ending the call. I sat by the fire for hours, watching the flames, thinking about choices and consequences, about justice and vengeance, about who I wanted to be in the aftermath of Michael's destruction. In the morning, I made my decision, but before I could act on it, I received a call from Elizabeth Chen, Michael's business partner at their firm. "Ethan, we need to talk," she said, her voice unnaturally tight. "Can you come to the office today?" "I'm still in Vermont," I replied. "Michael's lake house. This isn't something I want to discuss over the phone. I can send the company helicopter for you." The urgency in her voice was alarming. "What's this about, Elizabeth?" A heavy sigh. "Let's just say there are some ... discrepancies in the firm's finances that have come to light since Michael's passing, and your name is connected to several questionable transactions." My blood ran cold. "My name? What are you talking about? Funds diverted from client accounts? Offshore transfers? Your signature on the authorization forms? It doesn't look good, Ethan." "That's impossible," I said. "I never authorized any. The documentation suggests otherwise." "Look, I want to believe. There's an explanation. That's why I'm calling you first, before taking this to the authorities." My mind raced, more of Michael's manipulations. Had he been setting me up as a fall guy if his financial schemes were discovered? I thought of the journals in my possession, the evidence of his true character. "I'll be there tomorrow morning," I told Elizabeth, and Elizabeth, "Don't do anything until we've talked." After hanging up, I retrieved the journals from beside the unlit fire pit. I hadn't been able to bring myself to burn them, and now I was grateful for my hesitation. If Michael had implicated me in financial fraud, these pages might be my only defense. Back at the lake house, I found Vanessa waiting on the deck, her expression strained. "Ethan, we need to talk." "Now isn't a good time," I said, moving past her into the house. She followed me inside. "It's about Michael, about the things he did." I turned to face her. "You knew? About the accident? About him sabotaging my projects?" "No." She looked genuinely shocked. "Not that I meant the affair. But what are you talking about?" "What accident?" I laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. "Read for yourself." I tossed the journals onto the coffee table between us. "Your lover was quite thorough in documenting his betrayals, including how he arranged for scaffolding to collapse." While I was on a site inspection, Vanessa stared at the journals, then back at me, horror dawning in her eyes. "Ethan, I had no idea. You have to believe me." "I don't have to believe anything from you anymore," I replied coldly. "But right now, I have bigger problems. Apparently, Michael has implicated me in some financial fraud at the firm. I'm meeting with Elizabeth tomorrow to sort it out." She sank onto the sofa, looking suddenly exhausted. "He mentioned something about that. A contingency plan, he called it. Insurance, in case things ever went sideways. And you didn't think to tell me." The betrayal felt fresh all over again. "He said it was just business precaution. That he'd never use it unless ... double quotes." She trailed off. "Unless what?" "Unless you became a threat?" She met my eyes. "Ethan, there's something else." Something about the Archer Tower. Michael was worried about it. He said corners had been cut, that the investors were pushing for faster completion, higher returns. I know about the structural issues, Martin called me. Vanessa shook her head. It's worse than that. The land the tower is built on there were environmental assessments that showed potential instability, reports that were buried. If there's even a minor earthquake, my architect's mind immediately grasped the implications. New York wasn't known for major seismic activity, but even a moderate tremor could be catastrophic for a compromised structure. Elizabeth knows this. Everyone at the top of the firm knows. They're just hoping to get through the opening, collect their bonuses, and deal with renovations later. But Michael was getting cold feet. Said he couldn't have another high line on his conscience. Another high line, as if my accident had been weighing on him, rather than something he'd deliberately engineered. The sheer audacity of his self-delusion was almost impressive. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because he's gone, and I'm trying to... She gestured vaguely. I don't know. Make amends. Somehow, it's too late for us. I know that. But people could die in that building. Ethan, I studied her face, trying to see past years of deception to whatever truth might lie beneath. And the fraud allegations against me, fabricated. All of it. Michael created a paper trail over years, just in case he ever needed a scapegoat. He called it his nuclear option. Nice of you to warn me, I said bitterly. I didn't think he'd ever use it, not against you. Despite everything, he talked about you constantly, compared himself to you. It was like he was obsessed. Backtracked? With what I'd read in the journals, Michael's fixation on me, on besting me, on taking what was mine. A twisted form of brotherly love that had morphed into something darker. I need to get to New York, I said. Before the opening ceremony for the Archer Tower, I'll come with you, Vanessa said, standing. I know where Michael kept the original environmental reports. They're not at the office. He was too paranoid for that. I wanted to refuse her help, to keep my distance from this woman who had betrayed me so thoroughly. But practicality won out over pride. Fine, but this doesn't change anything between us. I know, she said softly. Some things can't be fixed, Ethan. I learned that the hard way. We drove to New York in tense silence, the journals and thumb drives secure in my bag. A weight of evidence against the brother who had systematically tried to destroy me while pretending to be my greatest ally. Ed Michael's Manhattan apartment, a sleek penthouse with views of Central Park. Vanessa led me to a hidden safe, behind an architectural rendering of the Archer Tower. Ironic placement, the combination is your birthday, she said. He used it for all his private safes, another twist of the knife. My birthday is his security code, a constant reminder of my existence, even in his most private spaces. Inside the safe were files, flash drives, and a small recording device. Vanessa grabbed a thick folder, labeled Archer, Original Assessments, while I examined the other contents. Look at this, I said, holding up a small black book. Account numbers, passwords, for the offshore accounts, Vanessa confirmed, where he's been moving money for years. Yours isn't the only name he's used as covered. I pocketed the book, along with the recording device. We need to get to Elizabeth before she goes to the authorities. It might be too late. The opening ceremony for the tower is tomorrow. Full media coverage, politicians, celebrities. Michael planned it as his crowning achievement. Then we go straight to the city inspector. Show them the real structural reports. Vanessa shook her head. The head inspector is Kevin Donahue. He and Michael were golf buddies. Kevin signed off on everything, probably with a healthy incentive. Then we go higher. The mayor's office, the press. Someone has to listen, in time to stop tomorrow's ceremony. With what proof? Documents that could easily be called forgeries? The word of the bitter brother and scorned ex-wife against a company? Worth billions. She had a point. We needed something irrefutable. Something that even Michael's powerful friends couldn't dismiss. I pulled out the recording device I'd found in the safe and pressed play. Michael's voice filled the room. Kevin, it's me. We need to discuss the latest simulation results for Archer. The foundation issues are worse than we thought. I know what we agreed, but this goes beyond cutting corners. If we proceed as planned, people could die. A second voice, presumably, Kevin Donahue. People could die crossing the street. Michael, the models show the building exceeding minimum code requirements. That's all I care about. That's all anyone will care about if questions are asked later. And when the first tremor hits, when floors start showing stress fractures, then we blame the construction contractors. Or claim unexpected ground conditions that couldn't have been foreseen. By then we'll all have collected our bonuses and moved on to the next project. It's how the game is played, and you've always been a good player. Don't develop a conscience now. I stopped the recording, meeting Vanessa's wide eyes. This changes things. He was gathering evidence. She whispered, maybe he really was planning to come forward, or covering his own ass, when things inevitably went wrong? I countered. Either way, we have what we need. We spent the night compiling evidence, the recorded conversations, the buried environmental reports, the structural assessments that showed the building barely meeting minimum safety standards under ideal conditions. In the morning, while crowds gathered for the grand opening of the Archer Tower, I walked into the offices of the New York Times with a comprehensive file documenting years of fraud, corruption, and criminal negligence. I included copies of select pages from Michael's journals, enough to establish his character and methods, but omitting the most personal betrayals. Some truths served no purpose beyond pain. By noon, the opening ceremony had been halted. By evening, the building was surrounded by city inspectors, structural engineers, and news vans. Elizabeth Chen and 3 other executives from the firm were being questioned by authorities. Kevin Donahue had taken leave from his position pending investigation. I watched the coverage from my hotel room, feeling strangely hollow. Vindication without satisfaction, justice without peace. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Just saw the news. You did the right thing, did I? I wasn't sure. I'd exposed the truth about the Archer Tower, potentially saving lives. But I'd also begun the process of dismantling my brother's legacy, revealing him as corrupt and negligent rather than brilliant and visionary. Another text came through. This one from Rachel, a structural engineer I'd worked with years ago. Just heard about Archer. The whole engineering community is talking. Call me if you need anything. A simple offer of support from someone who had no stake in the drama, no knowledge of the deeper betrayals. It felt like a lifeline thrown from a normal world I'd almost forgotten existed. 2 days later, as the full extent of the Archer Tower scandal unfolded across headlines, I met with investigators to provide my statement. I brought the journals, all 5 of them, as evidence of Michael's methods and mindset, but requested that certain personal details be redacted from the public record. Your brother deliberately caused your accident at Highline, the lead investigator said, clearly struggling to comprehend the level of betrayal, and you're asking us to keep that private. I'm asking you to focus on the crimes that affected others, the compromised building safety, the financial fraud, the corruption of city officials. My personal history with my brother is ... complicated. That's one way to put it, he said, shaking his head. For what it's worth, preliminary investigation of the plane crash suggests someone tampered with the fuel line. Any ideas who might have wanted your brother dead? I thought of the countless people Michael had used and discarded over the years, the careers he'd ruined, the lives he depended in pursuit of his own success. I couldn't begin to guess, I said truthfully. Michael made enemies as easily as he made friends. Sometimes they were the same people. After the investigators left, I returned to Michael's apartment, now technically mine, as his sole heir, and began the process of dismantling his life, donating his designer clothes to charity, arranging for his art collection to be auctioned, proceeds to benefit architectural scholarships for underprivileged students, small acts of transformation, turning the remnants of his self-serving existence into something that might genuinely help others. In his bedroom closet, behind a false wall I might never have found if not for Vanessa's reluctant guidance, I discovered one final journal, older than the others, dating back to our childhood. I hesitated before opening it, unsure if I could bear more revelations about my brother's lifelong resentment. The first entry, written in the unsteady hand of a 12-year-old Michael, caught me off guard. September 15, 1999, Dad hit Ethan again. Today, said his design for the school project was derivative, garbage, and tore it up. I wanted to stop him, but I was too scared. Ethan didn't even cry this time, just started over with a new design. He's stronger than me, even though I'm supposed to be the big brother. I hate Dad. Someday I'll be so successful he'll have to respect me, us. Then he can't hurt Ethan anymore. I sank onto the edge of the bed, flipping through pages that told a different story than the one I thought I knew. Michael as protector. Michael absorbing our father's criticism to shield me. Michael with ambitions born not just from ego, but from a desperate need to prove our worth to a man who had never been capable of genuine approval. When had that protective instinct twisted into something darker? When had his desire to shield me morphed into a need to control me, to own me, to destroy me if he couldn't? The later entries showed the transformation, gradual, insidious, a corruption of what might once have been love into something possessive and toxic. March 3, 2005. Ethan won the Harrelson Prize today. Dad actually called to congratulate him. Never called when I won the regional competition last month. It's always been this way, Ethan the favorite, Ethan the special one. I'm tired of looking out for him, tired of standing in his shadow. Maybe it's time I cast a shadow of my own. I closed the journal, understanding at last a complex tangle of love, resentment, and rage that had defined my relationship with Michael. Even when I hadn't known it was happening, he had been shaped by the same abusive father who had tormented me. But where I had escaped through creating beauty, he had escaped through accumulating power. Where I had sought connection, he had sought control, 2 paths diverging from the same wounded starting point. That evening, I sat on the balcony of Michael's penthouse, looking out over the city he had tried so desperately to conquer. In my hands was a small box containing the thumb drive and a single journal, the childhood one, which I'd decided to keep as a reminder that monsters aren't born, they're created. My phone buzzed with a message from Rachel, the structural engineer who had reached out after the scandal broke. We'd been talking regularly over the past few days, professional conversations that had gradually expanded to include more personal topics. Dinner tonight. I have news about the Highline project. The Highline development, my project from years ago, the one that had nearly cost me my life, was being revived. The new developers had tracked me down, asked if I would consider consulting on a redesign that stayed true to my original sustainable vision. 7 p.m. works. I texted back, good news or bad? Just news. Some things you should hear in person. I smiled, tucking the phone away. 3 months ago, I would have assumed the worst. Another sabotage, another betrayal lurking behind a simple dinner invitation. Now, I chose to approach it differently, not with naive trust, but with open eyes and a measured heart. The journals had shown me who Michael really was, but more importantly, they had shown me who I wasn't. I hadn't broken under the weight of his manipulous, I hadn't sought revenge. When it was within my grasp, I had chosen a different path, not because I was weak, as Michael had believed, but because I was strong enough to break the cycle. Here's what I've learned from this whole ordeal. Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones holding the knife. And sometimes, when that knife finally cuts you free instead of cutting you down, it's the most painful gift you could receive. As darkness fell over Manhattan, I looked at the childhood journal one last time, then closed it firmly. Michael had spent his life trying to destroy me, convinced that my success somehow diminished his own. In death, he had given me an unexpected gift, the freedom to rebuild without his shadow, to create a life measured by my standards rather than in comparison. To his my brother, my enemy, was gone. In his place, I found something unexpected. Not forgiveness, exactly, but release. The understanding that the greatest revenge against someone who tried to write your story for you is to pick up the pen and start a new chapter entirely. I turned away from the view, went inside, and began sketching plans for tomorrow. Michael might have been my brother by blood, but I would choose my real family, moving forward. Build connections as carefully and intentionally as I built structures with integrity at the foundation, with an eye toward what would endure. Some truths change us forever. The journals had revealed Michael's treachery, but they had also shown me my own resilience. My brother had tried to write my story, one of failure, inadequacy, and loss. In the end, he had only succeeded in freeing me to write a better one, and that's a plot twist I can live with.